Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Erin Molan Show. It's so great to have your company. I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend. I know for a lot of you it's been a mixed weekend when it comes to emotions, particularly with Charlie Kirk's memorial service and his funeral. A weekend of sadness, a weekend of anger maybe for some of you as well, but also a weekend of hope, because I think that's the feeling that you would have left with, having either been lucky enough to be there or to have watched it like I did all the way here from Australia, and just blown away by all of it. So I'll get to all of my thoughts and some of my favorite bits in just a moment. What is coming up on the show, I wanted to give you a little bit of an escape. I'll spend a fair bit of time on Charlie Kirk. I'll spend a fair bit of time on the recognition of a Palestinian state by the weakest leaders I've ever seen in my lifetime. But then I'm going to bring you an interview with a man called Michael Lombardi, multiple Super Bowl ring championship legend who worked with Bill Belichick, with Tom Brady, is now working back with Bill Belichick at the moment. He is incredible when it comes to leadership, when it comes to getting the best out of people, when it comes to managing brilliance. He's also insanely good when it comes to identifying talent. He talks about Charlie Kirk as well, and one of the things I ask him about is, how do you manage a football team when it comes to these kind of issues that can be divisive in the community, as we've seen, particularly post the murder of Charlie Kirk? And his answer is really eye-opening in regards to how they manage that. I also ask him about Bill Belichick's girlfriend and the talk around that and whether or not it's distracting. So that is something a little bit different that might give you a little bit of an escape. He's a brilliant man, so hang on for that. That's coming up after all of this. But let's get to the headlines. And of course, the biggest thing that's occurred over the weekend has been this memorial for Charlie Kirk, an incredible man who's left a legacy that I don't think even he could have envisaged. And I suspect he was someone who was very confident in who he was, what he stood for, and the kind of contribution that he was making, not only to America, but to the entire world. But I think even by his high standards, he would have been blown away by the response. 100,000 people there in this stadium, celebrating Charlie, celebrating Erika, celebrating Jesus and their faith, celebrating Donald Trump. Some of the moments that really stood out for me, I mean, there were so many. I want to start with Erika because she's just such a pillar of strength in these times. And isn't she just the most impressive woman? She walked out onto the stage and just stood there for moments, just stood there. And I think she was just feeling the love in the room for her husband, Charlie, for Bibi, as she calls him, which is so sweet. She spoke beautifully, of course. We know that much about her now. Before she started speaking, though, she stood up to the lectern. And, of course, how sad, surrounded by bulletproof glass. This is the world we now live in. And she mouthed up to the sky, "I love you." Didn't say anything, just mouthed those words to her Charlie, which was just, that's when I started to, the tears and the emotions, because it was just such a powerful moment. And I guess what it says to me is that moment for her, despite the fact that millions are watching just online, but also on networks all over the world, in the US, the tens of thousands of people that were there, her priority was her husband knowing at that moment that he was her first thought, that she loved him. There were so many powerful moments. I think one of the bits that really stood out for me was where she talked about him as a husband and her as a wife. And one of the parts she said, and I can only imagine if the rest of you are even a little bit like me, that you will relate to this. She said, and I mean relate in a way where we haven't done this ourselves, in that she said, "I never make him feel guilty for coming home late or for being at work longer than he wanted to or for traveling all the time." And I think that really...
Women, I have a challenge for you too. Be virtuous. Our strength is found in God's design for our role. We are the guardians. We are the encouragers. We are the preservers. Guard your heart. Everything you do flows from it. And if you're a mother, please recognize that is the single most important ministry you have. In our home, because Charlie traveled a lot, we tried to travel with him where we could. But I made sure that when Charlie returned from work, it was his sacred landing place, away from the worries of the world. I didn't make him feel guilty for being away too long or too much, or getting home too late. I always told him, home is here for you, and it'll be ready for you. And I made it into this place where he wanted to be as soon as possible when he was on the road.
That really hit home for me. And I think a lot of you as well would have admitted to yourself that there have been moments when you have done that to your partner. And look, often legitimately so, to be honest. I mean, it's hard. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. Raising kids is hard. Working is hard. Doing it all together is so hard. But I think often we are guilty of that. And I think particularly women, because the guilt we feel ourselves internally is insane, and it is so much more than men. I don't care what you say. This is not sexist to say. As women, I feel like we feel guilt so much more than men. And because of that, I think often we'll try and project that onto our partner, because we feel guilt so much and we get jealous that they don't. And it's frustrating. You know, I look at my daughter's father, and when he used to go away for work, he'd miss our child, absolutely. But the second he'd come home, I'd be like, oh, did you feel guilty? He'd be like, no, why would I feel guilty? I was working for her, for you. Like, I wasn't away partying, I was working. And I think, well, I go away for work, and every second of every day that I'm away for work, not out partying, not, you know, on a romantic, you know, trip somewhere with a partner, working, I am crippled by guilt. And so it really got me reflecting on that. And I think, you know, the other point she made is she made this home that he wanted to come home to. And I look at even friends of mine in relationships at the moment who say to me, you know, he spends all his time at work and it's so frustrating, and I'm so angry and we're always fighting. And I think there's a reason he doesn't want to come home. And I'm not saying it's your fault, but I think if you really self-reflect here, you sometimes can contribute to a home not being a place, and this can be men or women, where someone wants to come back to. And I loved that so much, that what she does, and it's not about being a doormat, it's not about putting up with treatment that you don't deserve, or some guy being awful or not, you know, prioritizing you. It's not that. It's about legitimate things that we make people feel guilty about because we don't feel good on the inside ourselves. So that was really powerful for me. And I know that for a lot of people, I think that will hit home in a good way, and it might help them reflect on that dynamic. And this is what I love so much about the conversations that Charlie has started here. And the other point I'd make here, I've seen so much that is so untrue since Charlie Kirk's murder regarding who he was and what he believed. He was racist. He was a bigot. He was Islamophobic. He was misogynistic. He was none of those things. If you actually watch anything he ever said, did, wrote, you would know that. The misogynistic thing really annoys me, and I'll tell you why. Yes, he believed absolutely that for a woman, her greatest purpose for humankind, for mankind, as a Christian, was to get married and have children. Not because he didn't think women were capable of anything more. The opposite. Isn't that true strength, to be completely capable of ruling the world, as we can now see Erika is? She was super impressive, had so many achievements, degrees, she'd started businesses, she was philanthropic, she was a Christian leader when he met her, and he adored her and loved her. It's not a weakness to be capable of kicking every goal professionally, but to choose love and marriage and children. And it doesn't need to be forever. And it doesn't need to be that you exclude everything else in your life. But to have that as a priority is not a weakness. It's an incredible strength. And those saying he's misogynistic for believing that are missing the point entirely. You're misogynistic. A woman who prioritizes that part of her life is incredible. That is incredible. And again, not because she's not capable of being extraordinary professionally. Of course not. It makes it even more special that she is capable, but she chooses this existence and this life. For me, that was really powerful as well. Really, really powerful. And I say that as a single mother who loves my child more than life, more than anything else, also loves my job more than life, more than anything else, if those two can coexist. I love what I do because I feel like part of what I do, well, a huge part of it is trying to shape and change the world for my child. So I'm so blessed that the work I do, I still link back to being a mother to my child, because the greatest gift I can give my 7-year-old daughter is the kind of world that will be peaceful, that will be loving, that will be respectful, democratic, all the things that I believe so deeply in. So I say that as someone who loves her job. But I look at so many women around me who are miserable in their jobs and just want to be mums, but feel like society won't allow them to do that, or feel like the people around them won't allow them to do that. Some of the greatest acts of strength and shows of bravery that I've seen have been from girlfriends of mine who could be prime minister, could be president, could be running massive companies, but choose to be mums and put every ounce of their being into it because they can. They've got support. They've got husbands who can support them. That's incredible. Exercising your right to choose is incredible. Now, the other amazing thing that Erika did was forgive the man who allegedly killed her husband. Have a listen.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life. That young man. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
She's extraordinary. She is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, I look at that and I think if she can do that, then surely every single one of us can think in our minds right now about someone that we might, hate is a strong word, but someone who has wronged us so deeply and so significantly that we hold hate in our hearts for, which is so unhealthy for us. If she can forgive him, then have a think about who you can forgive. I ordered a Bible last week. It's called like it's like a 1 minute a day Bible, or a Bible. And yes, it's baby steps for me because I haven't gone to church. I mean, for baptisms and weddings, yes, but not for myself or for God in so long. And I'm trying to start, and I'm exploring my relationship, and I've spoken about this before. And I wanted to share just something a little bit lighter with you this morning. I had the Bible on my bed, and my daughter was asking what it was, and I was doing a little video of the book itself just to include in this and to show you guys that I was starting to read this and get your thoughts, and just have a watch and a listen to this little conversation we had. And yes, I acknowledge there's work to be done with my child and the future of God in her life. Maybe we could read a little bit of this every morning, baby girl, and we could learn about God.
I don't know what God is.
Yeah, but do you know all about God?
God is God.
Yes, God is God, but do you know what God stood for? And
Oh, God stood for. Right. He made people.
right,
He made for the army to protect us.
right. And what about Jesus?
I know about Moses, his 4 brothers.
Did he have 4 brothers? What about Mary?
Oh, Mary, Jesus.
Yeah, Mary was Jesus's mum.
Yeah.
Did you like Mary or?
She looks weird.
Okay, so I think we do need to read the Bible. Anything else you know about God?
God. Let me whisper in your ear. God is God.
Okay, so
Okay.
you're saying you don't want to read the Bible with me every morning? No?
No.
So it's a work in progress, absolutely. But oh gosh, I love her so much. She's so divine. She's so funny. She's so psychotic in the best possible way. She is robust. She does not take a backward step. She is her mother. She's also deeply caring and just, she'll flip me the bird as a 7-year-old and then hug me if I look sad. She's just a real mixed bag. I'm very blessed. Now back to Charlie Kirk's memorial service. Donald Trump spoke, of course, the President of the United States, and said, look, it was quite a juxtaposition when he referenced the killer. We just had Erika up on stage who had spoken about her forgiving this young man, as she called him, and then have a listen to the way Trump described him.
Charles James Kirk was heinously murdered by a radicalized, cold-blooded monster for speaking the truth.
Now, I actually loved this, and I'll tell you why. On one hand, you have this incredible woman who 11 days after the murder of her husband, the brutal assassination of her husband, the love of her life, she says she forgives him, and she does. That's incredible. And then you have the President of the United States labeling him for what he is: evil, a monster, a killer. And you know what? Those two things can coexist. Both can be true. And I loved it because I felt like it represented so many things inside of me. The part of me that wants to be more like Erika and wants to forgive even evil, but also the part of me that wants to identify this evil and wants to call it out and wants to rid the world of it. And I loved that both parts of how I felt were represented up on that stage. I thought that was not jarring at all, not contradictory. I thought it was a perfect representation of how so many people feel, how they want to feel and how they do feel. And both are okay. Both are okay. I wanted to give a shout out to Charlie's Chief of Staff, who said something that I thought was just so incredible. Have a listen to this.
Charlie's assassin thought that he could steal and silence his voice by putting a bullet in his neck. In the words of Soren Kierkegaard, the tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule has just begun.
I mean, incredible and so true. So true. And we should all, and no, we're not going to be Charlie Kirks or Donald Trumps. Not everyone watching this or listening to this is going to reach that level of fame or influence. But in your own existence, in your own life, do you want to be the tyrant or do you want to be the martyr? It's not a complex thing to decide or to choose. It's good versus evil. I just thought that was super powerful. Now, I did say I'd ignore Tucker Carlson. I know, and I am generally and genuinely an honest person. I just combined that word. But I just have to bring you this bit, because even at the funeral of someone who was supposedly a close friend of his, and look, they must have been, because he's speaking at his funeral, and the people around Charlie would not have allowed that had Charlie not had deep affection for this person. I get it. But even this, he could not help himself. He could not help himself talking about people eating hummus in Jerusalem who wanted to kill Jesus. Have a listen to this, and then listen to his laugh at the end. And you tell me, go to the comment section, flood it. You tell me if this was genuinely just trying to pay tribute, or if this was Tucker Carlson attempting to somehow blame the Jews. Have a listen.
And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Now the laugh, like it would be parody and funny if it wasn't so disgusting, to be honest, the rhetoric that comes out of his mouth. I just think at that moment, given everything that is happening, the fact he could not help himself from going there says everything you need to know about that man. Now I promise, I hereby solemnly swear that I will try really hard to ignore him from this point on. He does not make it easy for me, though. What I can't ignore is the big news, the other big news, and that is the recognition of a Palestinian state by the UK, Canada, and Australia. Really? Now, I'll spare you the self-serving drivel that's been used as justification for this by yellow-bellied leaders without a spine, an ounce of moral clarity, or an iota of strength, because you're welcome. It's the same BS you've heard over and over again. It's rubbish. They are all appeasing the extremes of their parties and perceived domestic interest to preserve their own positions. That's it. And it's at the expense of not only the Palestinians they pretend to care about, but the vast majority of their own people who see this for exactly what it is. Self-serving nonsense that will be recorded in the history books as abhorrent, as terrorist supporting, and just as plain embarrassing. It's embarrassing. You are all absolute clowns. Clowns. You do not care a tiny bit about one child in Gaza. Not a tiny bit, because all you have now done is say to the people who have got them into this hellhole mess, the terrorists, that you applaud their work, that you recognise it, that you reward it. That is what you have done. So instead of stopping it, instead of cutting this snake off at the head, you have said, how can we help you further? How can we enable you to do this again? To condemn your people to suffering, as well as the Jews and the Israelis, which I know you could not give a tinker's cuss about. And what you have just done is give them the greatest gift they could have ever asked for. And it's pathetic, and it would be funny if it wasn't so serious. It would be laughable. History will judge you. I will judge you right now, but you don't care about that. History will judge you, and you should deeply care about that. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had this to say in response.
I have a clear message for those leaders who recognize a Palestinian state after the horrific massacre on October 7th. You are giving a huge reward to terror. And I have another message for you. It will not happen.
Now, love him or hate him, and everyone has an opinion, You cannot argue the fact that he is strong. He is strength personified. And no, not strength because he bullies or strength because he's powerful, but strength because he knows what he says, he has conviction, and he does what he believes in. And you can't say anything of the sort for any of those other leaders. They are embarrassments. And they have let their own people down in a way that I have not seen before. It's a blight on their leadership. They've got none. On the countries they purport to represent, and on the place that they pretend to have done this in honor of. You've let everyone down. Now, let's go to something a little bit different. A little bit of a change of pace, but still something I know you guys will all love, because he's a legend. His name is Michael Lombardi. He's won multiple Super Bowl championship rings. As a talent scout, general manager, administrator, as a boss, he's awesome. He worked with Bill Belichick, with Tom Brady. He's back with Bill now. And we go into, how do you identify talent? How do you manage a team when things are politically divisive? We look at the response of sporting teams to the death of Charlie Kirk. We look at how they act when it comes to Black Lives Matters or political movements. I also ask him about Belichick and his much younger girlfriend. Whether it's a distraction, there is always commentary around that. He is very blunt. He doesn't hold back. And he is such an impressive man, and I'm so glad to say that he joins me now. Michael, thank you so very much for giving us some time here on the Erin Molan Show. It's so lovely to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I always enjoy talking to Australia. I've always had a great time when I came down there in 2019. I'm a huge AFL fan, and I've got some friends down there, so I appreciate you having me to promote my book. Thank you.
See, this has not started particularly well because I was the first woman to host rugby league, the NRL, and we are in direct competition with the AFL. In fact, we fight venomously with them. So if you could redo that and reference rugby league, just joking. AFL is a wonderful sport as well. And a few players that there's some similarities, isn't there, in terms of what they do in the air and that kind of thing?
You know, I think any great athlete has similarities to what they do. I think there's a level of achievement that they have, and the inspiration to be great is what makes people so good. And I think whether you study Tom Brady, who plays American football, or you study the Australian players, you know, we have a punter on our team here at North Carolina, Tom McGuinness, who's an Australian rugby player. I think there's a level that you have to get to, and it's important. You go from being a good player to a great player to a star player, and if you don't follow that natural progression, it becomes difficult. And I think that's one of the great things about being around talented players.
Talk to me about talent, and we'll get into the book in a moment, but I find it fascinating, and I've worked with so many people when I was hosting sport who could look at someone for a millisecond and determine almost immediately whether or not they had the potential to be superstars. And obviously potential is a very different thing to then the willingness to turn that potential into stardom, as we've seen in a lot of different cases. But what is your process?
Well, I think the hardest thing to do is to determine heart, right? And so the Navy, the United States Navy here in America, they spent over $500 million trying to test men and women to see if they can make it through budge training, which is really 8 weeks of the hardest part of your life, sleep deprivation, exhaustion, all that. And what they'll tell you is every person that is a top athlete, or every person that finishes early in the camp, first in the lead, first in the line, never makes it. It's the one that can do it day after day after day. In my first book, Gridiron Genius, I talked about what I call the Born to Run theory after Bruce Springsteen. Springsteen has played Born to Run 3,000 times in his career, and he's played it in Perth, he's played it in Melbourne, he's played it in Sydney, he's played it all over the world, right? And he plays it like it's the first time he's ever played it. That's something that you have to have innately in your body to do something repeatedly over and over again. And the ones that make it at Navy SEALs do that. And they go from one drill to the next drill to the next drill. And all they're thinking about is that 1% improvement. And it really goes back to something that's so important. Intensity impresses, consistency transforms. And when you're consistently doing things all the time, I think that's what separates good to great. And having that born to run mentality that I'm going to do this over and over, even if it gets boring. I mean, sometimes we just don't like doing things that are easy to come by. And I think that's one of Belichick's greatest strengths. He loves it, and he does the things he has to do to make it work.
Talk to me about Belichick, because you've worked with him on many occasions, and you're back working with him now, right?
Yeah, we're at the University of North Carolina here in Chapel Hill, which is wonderful. A great school, great academic institution. We've got some work to do to build a football program, but Bill is the same coach he's always been. He loves what he does. I think he has a great affection for the process, and that's something that I think all great leaders have, is the ability to fall in love with the process. You know, we don't look at the scoreboard, we look at what we're doing and how we're getting there. And again, it's that 1% improvement each and every single day that involves all of us. Like, even as the older you get, you lose the appetite for wanting to improve, then you're going to fall short. And I think that's something that he has drilled in me. He's drilled it in every player on this team, that I come to work here to get better every day, no matter what age I am. And I can't rely on experience or, oh, I got that, you know, or my badge. You know, I've got to be able to prove and deliver every single day. And that's something that I think we do. I think there's a great line that talks about, you know, the greatest chess masters in the world make lightning fast moves, but it's only through really slow study that they're allowed to do that. And that's something that Belichick preaches.
It's the difference, I guess, for him now is the headlines that he was never making prior. Is he good at blocking that out? And I, of course, refer to his relationship that's been very highly publicized.
Yeah, I think he has such a great ability to block out the noise, and it has no effect on our team. It certainly is something that I'm sure in your country, the clicks are popular for people, but it doesn't really affect us, and it doesn't affect our players. And as I've told everybody here, you know, we played Richmond, which is a smaller school, on our level on Saturday. And he prepared for it like it was Super Bowl 49. So I think that drive is still in him. It's really, really fun to see, and it's invigorating. And the fact that we're on college campuses and there's so much youth around us, it's really invigorating for all of us. It makes you feel young, it makes you feel vibrant, and it brings your energy back. And I think, to me, that's something he loves.
Best player that you've ever worked with, and why?
Oh, great question. So I think, you know, in Football Done Right, in the book, I give Tom Brady the #1 spot. But I've been so blessed. And as you look back on your career, I've seen some of the most incredible players, from Joe Montana to Ronnie Lott when I was at the 49ers, and then obviously being around Tom Brady, Gronk, Julian Edelman at the Patriots. I think there's so many great ones. Brady, what separates Brady from everybody else, like Montana, was their incredible ability to forget about success. They just moved on to the next day. Nothing was good enough. You know, my favorite Vince Lombardi line, and I'm not related, but my favorite Vince Lombardi line isn't winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. My favorite line is the greatest reward for doing is the opportunity to do more. And that's what I see great players do. They want to do more. And I think Tom really exemplified that, because, I mean, think about it. He, you know, when in 2014, the year we beat Seattle for the Super Bowl 49, you know, early week 4 of that NFL season, everybody thought he was done. Everybody thought it was over with, because he was 4 years old. He was at the end. He wasn't playing well. And he goes on to win 3 more Super Bowls. Yeah.
It's insanity. I love that.
Great.
It's such an interesting way to put it. And I look at, you know, so many different journeys, and most people, and if you don't, how blessed you are, have this fear of failure. And I think a lot of that, when you actually break it down, failing, it's not so much about failing, but it's about the loss of opportunity to do what you love again, over and over. You know, just when you said that, it made me think of that. Why would I fear failure? And I guess because I love what I do so desperately.
Right.
It's moved beyond that public perception element, which used to completely, you know, I would obsess over. Now it's failure might mean I don't get to do what I love. So that drives me, because I want to do it more and do it better.
Right. And so you don't see it as failure. You see it as lessons learned, right? And so I think that's how
100%.
Right. It's like, everybody, when you do a show or we go out to practice, we call it practice because we're going to make mistakes. We call it practice
Yes.
because we have to improve. Right. And so when you're doing a Broadway play or you're an actor, you have to rehearse and you have to get every line perfect. Well, we get to learn from our mistakes and really the lessons we learn from them make us better. And that's why you have to be a lifelong learner. That's why you have to constantly read books and educate yourself on, who the kids are today. I mean, at my age, we're, different than the kids grew up when I was growing up. They're way different. They have cell phones. They have all different. They take scooters around campus. And so you have to kind of educate yourself on that. And I think to me, that's what makes you young. And when you lose curiosity, you lose everything in your life.
Generally on this show, I talk a lot about politics, about national security, about foreign affairs, and having also been in that sporting world, we had the same-sex marriage debate back in the day and a vote, and some codes got involved, some clubs got involved, some didn't. It's a really difficult decision, and it's also a difficult space, a complex space, particularly when politics is so divisive in the US. You must have players who are very pro-Trump or who potentially despise him with every ounce of their being. How do you manage that? Because it is so, it feels more divisive in America than almost anywhere else. And I think part of that is a good thing in that people care so deeply. And I love that.
Yeah.
But it can also cause problems in a team environment when people do care that deeply and they're opposed.
Well, we're a team, right? You ever see the movie Dr. Dolittle with all those animals, right? I'm sure your daughter has seen that, right? And so, we all, and he has a great line in that movie. We all may not look alike, we all may not think alike, but we belong together as a team. I think that's the healthy conversation that has to be had. And so we have one common purpose. We're not here to be political activists. We're here to help the University of North Carolina win. And that doesn't mean we shy away from having your own beliefs. But when you enter a team environment, we have one commonality. And I think we all work towards that commonality. And I think it brings us together. It creates a sense of belonging. Owen Eastwood wrote a wonderful book called Belonging. And he talks about how you have to bring all people from different cultures together. And there has to be a commonality. That's what leadership's about, right? The number one rule of leadership is called management of attention, where you have a plan, you bring people in and you explain what the plan is. Because without a mission, without a plan, you're not going to unite anybody. And I think that's ultimately where you have to go. And if you want to be on a team, you've got to fall in line with that. We define mental toughness here at North Carolina. We did it at New England as doing what's right for the team when it may not be right for you. And I think that's something that we
so
stress.
True. And if you're incapable of putting team ahead of anything else that you care about, you're probably not right for that team.
No, you're never going to be right. And you're going to be an outsider, and you're going to be on an island, and you're going to have your own situation where you're not going to feel included. And what we want to feel is included. And it's like when you feel like you can contribute to the team. And I think that's something that, because remember, creating a team is a spiritual challenge. And so you've got to find a way to bring people together from all different walks of life, because nothing's going to be the same. And, frankly, it's boring if everybody thinks alike. Bill Walsh, when I worked for him in San Francisco, he had a great saying: if we're all thinking alike, no one's thinking.
Yeah, I love that. Belichick, I think, wrote the foreword, did he, to your latest book? Is that correct?
No, he wrote it to the first one.
The first book.
Jim Nantz wrote the foreword to this book, and Jim's been a dear friend of mine. We worked together at CBS Sports, and he did it really, and I've spent a lot of time with Jim, because and he's not an athlete. He's like you. He takes great pride in what he does, and he wants to be the best at his profession, which is ultimately what we're all trying to do, and, sometimes even if you just, I tell my children, I've got two boys, one of them works here at North Carolina, the other one works at San Francisco. You just want to be the best at the job you have. And when you strive for that, everything else falls in line.
And if you're not comfortable talking about this, I completely understand. But I wondered the impact of Charlie Kirk's death on you, particularly as someone who obviously lives in America, and I don't even know what your political affiliations are. I have no idea.
I think to me, it doesn't really matter when,
Yeah.
I was a child of assassinations. I can remember being a very young kid and my father had the television on and I could hear laying in bed in the summertime that Robert Kennedy got shot. And before that, Martin Luther King got shot. And I have no hobbies other than football. But if I did have a hobby, it would be solving the JFK assassination because I certainly don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald did it. And there's too much evidence to support that he didn't. But I think it's really unfortunate that we can't have conversations about everything. And Charlie had a great following. He was exactly what all great leaders have. He had a message. He was very good at articulating his message, and he wanted to have conversations with all vast of people. And so you didn't have to agree with them. I think that's the beautiful thing about being around smart people. Jack Nicholson has this great line that he talks about when he says, I don't like to listen to people that think like me. He said, I read every book by Ann Coulter because I want to learn what the opposite side thinks. It's the elixir of life. And I think the elixir of life is learning from somebody else. So for me, I read as many books that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone as I do Lee Harvey Oswald didn't act alone, because I want to hear what people are saying. And I think that's part of what we have to accomplish in this, and we need to be able to talk like that.
No, I agree entirely. I think if you exist in an echo chamber, A, you're not going to be well informed, and B, not being challenged on anything will make you an incredibly boring and a person with very little substance. I think you have to consistently challenge your perspective. I do on everything, and I feel very strongly about certain issues, but I give you the nod. I will watch as much, say, Al Jazeera, for example, as I will Fox News, or as I feel like you need to absorb as much information as possible to then come to a position where you are confident that you've got all the information and it's an educated position.
Yeah. I think that's the only way we get better, because we have aha moments. I didn't think about that, or I didn't see it that way. And I think, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, here I am. I grew up in a little beach town in New Jersey, that Springsteen made famous. It's near Highway 9, a white neighborhood, a summertime population, go from 15,000 people that lived here in the winter to 150 in the summer. And so I enter into the NFL. And now I'm dealing with players from all walks of life, right? And I watched The Wire, which is a famous American TV show on HBO about inner city Baltimore and the plight of a black man, the plight of a young African American. And for me, it was the greatest lesson I could have ever learned, because not that I lived the life that they lived, but I learned about the life. And so instead of being so ultimately critical of someone who ended up getting in the drug trade, you realize that thin line, that fork in the road, is so narrow, and you learn to understand it, and you're more forgiving of some bad decisions that a 16 or 17-year-old make. And I think, to me, that opened my eyes up to so many things as I'm evaluating, because my life has been evaluating players, right? I evaluate talent for a living. And so when you do that, you've got to have enough information, and you can't evaluate if you've never lived in those shoes.
It's so true. And empathy as well. I think empathy is such a massive thing, and it's very difficult to have empathy if you don't have insight into someone else's experience.
Yeah. And it's so easy to be dismissive of it, right? And you just don't know who the person is, or you've walked in their shoes. And I think, to me, that's something that I've learned, and you get through it and you understand it. And look, not everybody grew up the way I grew up, and not everybody grew up the way you grew up, with your father being a voice in your life and a presence in your life. And so you have to take an understanding of that, and that shapes the person who you've become, and it certainly shaped the person I become. And if I don't know who shaped this person, it's hard for me to really judge them.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're young, I think you assume everyone has the same upbringing that you do. You assume that you are loved and you are safe and you are protected. And when I started to realize, gosh, I could have made awful decisions, and I did on multiple occasions, but I always had a mum and a dad to go home to who loved me and who were there for me. And I think, God, and life is still hard. Imagine if you don't have that. I can't even imagine. So very blessed and very grateful. Absolutely. Final question. Have you ever had a massive blow up with either Tom Brady or Belichick?
No, no. You know,
Never.
because I think we come from a place of we're all after the same thing. That doesn't mean we
Yeah.
don't disagree, right? Like that doesn't mean we don't disagree. But I think when the ultimate goal is to get to where we want to go, we have to
Yeah.
disagree, but there's no sense in making it personal. There's no sense
Yes.
in making it personal because what happens when you make it personal, you don't really hear the argument. You don't hear the argument.
Yeah.
You don't hear what the other voice is saying. And so for me, it's always been, hey, I think this, you think that, I think this, you think that. And then what makes it the healthiest relationship is the fact that we all admit when we're wrong. You know,
Yes.
I was wrong on that. I didn't see that, or why didn't I? We spend a lot of time analyzing our mistakes more than we do looking at our success.
Yes. It's when I look at rugby league coaches and some AFL coaches, some of their blow ups are the things of legend now. So are you guys more polite than we are in Australia?
No, I
Or
mean, I'm
just
from New
you?
Jersey. I don't know if anybody's ever called me polite. I'm very straightforward. You know, I'd say what I think. But I think to me, when you have mutual respect, you have open
Yes.
communication. You know, I know where Bill's coming from, and I know there's no hidden agenda. And the biggest thing too, Aaron, is ego. You know, ego is the killer of
Everything.
all decision making. Who gets
Yeah.
credit? Bill and I don't have an ego when it comes to it. We just want to win. And when you remove ego, I was a young scout. I was a young coach when I first started, and someone said to me, ego is the cancer of this profession.
Yeah.
And, you know, 50, 40 years later, it still is. It's the cancer of your profession. You're in the entertainment business.
Absolutely.
And so everybody wants to get credit. How do I get ahead? How do I do that? When you're not really interested in that, you're just interested in doing a good job, then I think it changes you.
What are you afraid of, finally?
Oh, I think to me, what fear of failure. I think that we all feel failure. You know, I think and how do you measure success? I think those are the two things that you fear. When is it good enough, and when do you fear? You know, and you don't want to. You want to be great at it. Like you're not in this. You know, you don't. Springsteen doesn't write a song and just how it's okay to be mediocre. You want it to be great. We're doing stuff to be great. I didn't write a book to it just to be okay. I want it to be great. And I think to me, that's what motivates you. You know, I say this all the time. Fear does the work of reason. You know, and I believe that when you're fearful, it's easy to you reason, and that makes you motivate yourself. And if you don't have purpose when your feet hit the ground in the morning, you're not going to go very far.
I love that. I used to think, so peace, I did therapy for the first time 2 years ago, never done any in my life, and greatest gift I ever gave to myself. And I used to think that all I wanted was peace rather than this chaotic existence that I had, and I was anxious all the time, et cetera, et cetera. But now I figured out that peace without purpose is way too empty for me. Purpose is key, and then that gives me peace if I'm living a life
Yeah.
of purpose. I love purpose.
My college roommate came to see me this past weekend, and he was talking about retiring. And to me, when you can't, you're built to go. You're built to go. And
Yeah.
every person that retires, and so you have to have a purpose. The peace comes from doing the best you can. And it comes internally. You gain peace because you have confidence in what you're doing. You know, it's
Yes.
like you don't have peace. It becomes a problem if you don't have confidence. And in life, early in our lives, we try to have confidence without evidence. And as we get older, we have confidence we know it's the right thing.
Yes. Brilliant. I could talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, you have a real job, so you must go. Michael Lombardi, thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Tell people how they can get the book.
Yeah, I'm on any platform. My two books, Football Done Right and Gridiron Genius, both of them are available in hardcover and paperback at any local store or online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever you have in Australia. And it's always good to
Brilliant.
talk to you. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you so much for coming on. Really grateful. Fascinating, isn't it? Something a little bit different for the Erin Molan Show, but I really enjoyed talking to him. And make sure you get his books as well, particularly if you're into sport. But even if you're not, running a business, a company, just a family, some of those tips and some of the ways to get the best out of people, I think, really are relatable to us all. Time for fan feedback. And as I say every single time, even if you despise me and abuse me, you're still a fan. Thank you so much for watching. Let's start with Joel says, "Hi, you have interesting views. Go easy on Tucker and Candace, though. Either could be the next president." Joel? 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 Okay. Okay. If they do ever become president, this is to my team. Please delete this from the archives. Thank you. Here we go. Someone commenting on the video I made, which you can still go and have a look at, about my evolving relationship with God. It doesn't really quite exist now, but it's something I'm looking more into. So have a look if you're interested. Some of you are. I just watched your nice and honest answer about your religion and faith, but one sentence struck me. Sometimes you ask yourself in the face of evil, where is God? As a grandchild of 2 Auschwitz survivors, I asked myself this question a lot. And then I found the below video of the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, an amazing guy that can really explain complex things. When you watch the video below, you understand that what you were doing is actually the answer to that same question. So thank you again for standing up to humanity. Now, I went and watched this, and then I wrote back to this man, Ronnie. Thank you, Ronnie, so much for sending. And I said, oh my goodness, tears I just watched. Thank you so, so, so much. I'm going to play a little bit of it now for you.
People sometimes ask me, where was God at Auschwitz? I don't know. But Jewishly, it's the wrong question. The real question is, where was humanity at Auschwitz? God never said he'd stop us harming one another, but he'd give us a moral code, commandments engraved in stone, which taught us how to stop ourselves. Where was humanity when old men and women were being murdered, millions being gassed, children thrown on the flames still alive? The real question, so painful we can hardly ask it, is not where was God when we called to him, but where were we when he called to us?
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think, that's probably the thing I've struggled most with, is seeing so much pain in the world and wondering, how can any God allow this to happen? But there you go. It's really beautiful. Lee says, good on you, Erin. I hope your career is long and successful. And if you want to be spiritual, ask the Holy Spirit to give you wisdom. Thank you so much. Carol says, your faith, your choice. Stay strong, stay pretty. Thank you. May says, oh, Erin, keeping you, your videos are so relatable and your honesty is giving me and surely many others the permission to do so too. I pray God protect and bless you. Thank you so much. That's so lovely. And Eric says, I like the variety of your outfits. It must be nice to wear whatever you wish, not what a TV show tells you to wear. Summer is coming for you down under. Israel High, is that a hint? Summer's coming? I mean, oh gosh. I certainly won't be hosting this show in a bikini. My mother and I, we fight once a week. And when I say fight, it's like beautiful fighting about my wardrobe, particularly when it comes to not just this show, but like my little preview videos that I do. If I wore a bikini, that could possibly be it. I could possibly lose my mother. So right now I'll kind of toe the line, but I suspect I will maintain a somewhat dignified stance and not lower myself to a bikini. I still like to be classy. And I know some of you don't think I am. I actually think I am. And I wear what I feel good in. And I wear what I like. And again, I point back to this aspect of it. Judge me on the substance, on what I say, on what I believe, on what I fight for, on what I stand for. Love you all. Thank you so much for watching, particularly if you're still watching or listening now. It means so much. We just had a look at September and our growth numbers are amazing. The greatest gift you guys can give to me, apart from watching yourselves and being involved and just being part of this family, share the show. If you love it, if you like bits of it, if you like clips, send it to people you know and they might like it as well. Again, love you all. Thanks so much for watching and for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.